God. You can see from the title, we are going deeper with our book, The Religious Instructions of the Negroes in the United States. All right. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. If you are new to this podcast, it is free to watch. Just make sure you are tapping those hearts. And it would be also much appreciated if you share, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I think my screen is like glitching because I have on a white shirt and the background is white, so it might be a little aggravating. It might be a little aggravating. But anywho, let's rock and roll with our show for today. We're not gonna waste any time because we got a lot of information to get through. If you can't stay the whole time, make sure you watch it on the replay on YouTube. We went through all the chapters up until this chapter, which is part 2, chapter 1. All right, so this live is when the system studies the people it oppressed. So welcome back to the Hood2Hooded Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shon, a.k.a. Dr. Cheapest Sunflower, and this is where we take history, pressure, pain, purpose, and power. We turn it into lessons for the future. This is Hood2Hooded, from your hood to your future. Thank you, PGS Corey, for getting that number 1 Get Their badge. I hope all is well today. So we talking about going from survival to structure, from confusion to clarity, from inherited systems to intentional legacy. Today we are continuing our reading of The Religious Instructions of the Negroes in the United States by Charles C. Jones. What's up, family? OCO, my G. All right. Now, before we get into part 2, chapter 1, I want us to understand something very, very clearly. This book is not just a religious text. This book is not just church history. This book is a window into how people empower, study, describe, judge, manage, and spiritually control a population they were also exploiting. So when we read this, we are not reading passively. We are reading like investigators. We are reading like descendants. We are reading like builders. We are reading like people who understand the history is not dead. History is still sitting inside our institutions, our language, our churches, our schools, our family wounds, our money patterns, and our identity struggles. And this is why Hood2Hooded matters. All right? Because a lot of us inherited the consequences of systems we were never taught to name. We inherited spiritual confusion. We inherited economic struggles, broken family systems. We inherited shame around the origin, language, land, and our identity. We inherited survival patterns and call them personalities. But once you can name a system, you can stop worshiping that system. Once you can study a system, you can stop being silently shamed and shaped by the system that is meant to oppress us. Once, I think this little thing is like glitchy. It keeps like glitching out. So hopefully, I don't know, hopefully it's not distracting. If it is, just let me know and I have to take the background out. All right. So that is today's lesson. So chapter summary before we begin reading our long chapter for today. This chapter is part 2 of the book. It's good. Okay. And it's called The Moral and Religious Condition of the Negroes in the United States. Chapter 1 is titled Disadvantages to be Encountered in Prosecuting an Inquiry into the Moral and Religious Conditions of the Negroes in the United States. In plain language, the author is saying before we can talk about the moral and religious conditions of this population, which is our people, we have to admit that the people doing the investigation have bias, blind spots, pride, fear, social interests that may prevent them from telling the full truth. Now that part is important, family, because even though the book is written from a deeply paternalistic and racist framework, This guy is admitting something that still matters today. People inside a system are not always honest about the damage the system creates, especially here in America. Every system they create has been to oppress us, to kill our creative minds, to reclassify us, to put us into categories that are not authentic and that do not correlate to the history. So, let me say this again. People in a system are not always honest about the damage the system creates. That applies to slavery. That applies to colonization. That applies to poverty. That applies to healthcare, dentistry, education, religion, business, and it applies to the family systems. Sometimes the people who benefit from all the systems call themselves objective. Meaning they think that they're being objective, but they benefit from the system. So, of course, they're going to give their people more than they give us, and they're not trying to give us anything. Sometimes the people who manage the system call themselves moral. In this book, they call themselves moral repeatedly while they were trying to convert us to Christianity, while they were trying to tell the masters to send the people that they owned to church so that they could be more obedient and follow the laws and be baptized in catechism. That's what they talked about throughout this whole book so far, is how they were trying to make it seem like slavery was not against the divine law, is what they said. This is why this book stuck out to me like a sore thumb. It's like, what the hell are y'all talking about? Right? Sometimes the people who profit from the system say, we just trying to help. In their eyes, they were trying to help us. But we was like, we don't need your help. But they forced the help down our throats. And if you did not take the help, like we already know, if you did not convert to a Christian, then you had one other option, which is to be, put to sleep permanently. We'll just say that part. But the question becomes, who are you trying to help? How are you trying to help us? And you're trying to help us with who having the control, right? That is what we are listening for today. So this author, Jones, Charles Coughlin, what is his name? Cole Cock Jones. He opens this chapter by saying that the knowledge of the moral and religious conditions of the people is necessary before anyone can correct their feelings or take correct actions. He compares it almost to like diagnosing a disease, meaning you cannot prescribe a remedy until you understand the nature and extent of the problem. So for us to not be under their control, this was considered a problem. This was considered a disease because we did not want to be controlled. And I talk about the doctors back in those times who came up with the term drapetomania, meaning that if you didn't want to be enslaved, something was wrong with you. Same type of ideology. If you did not want to be a Christian, something's wrong with you. And you'll have people in your family, you'll have people in your friend groups who are Christians be like, hey, you don't want to be a Christian, something wrong with you. So they get this from these people because they made it seem like if you did not want to be colonized, something is wrong with you. Now, as a dentist, I understand that metaphor. You cannot treat what you refuse to examine. You cannot restore what you refuse to diagnose, and you cannot heal what you are still hiding. But here is where we must be careful in this chapter. Who gets to diagnose us? Who gets to label a disease? Who gets to call other people broken and degraded? They called us in the first chapter poor creatures. I don't think so. Whenever I have melanin, this means I'm a magical creature. I'm not even a creature. I'm just a magical being, right? But they said, oh, these poor creatures. How are we poor creatures? But I'm getting sidetracked now. Who gets to avoid the responsibility for creating these conditions? Now we're going to look through a hood-to-hooded lens, because oppressed people are often studied as the problem, while the system that oppressed them gets to be treated like the background. The people get pathology placed on them. The system gets normalized, and this is very dangerous. So we are going to focus on 4 main disadvantages in this chapter. This author names 4 major disadvantages that make us have to take a deeper inquiry, right? First, he says there's the problem of familiarity. I can't even say the word. In other words, people have been around the suffering, poverty, ignorance, and moral injury of enslaved people for so long they stopped feeling shocked by it. I feel like that's us right now. We've been around oppression. We've been around all of these different laws and slave codes, and they teach it in school, so you're not really even shocked by it. You can stroll past an officer doing something to a melanated person, and it might not hit you the same as it would if you were not forced to feel like suffering, poverty, ignorance, moral injury is okay. He then says people became so accustomed to what they saw they no longer responded with proper concern back then. That's powerful because familiarity can numb your compassion. When people see poverty every single day, they can start acting like poverty is natural. When people see bad teeth every day, they can start acting like dental neglect is normal. When people see trauma every single day, they can start calling trauma just an attitude. When people see the struggle every single day, they can start calling the struggle a culture. But no, sometimes what people call culture is actually adaptation to captivity. Sometimes what people call laziness is exhaustion. Sometimes what people call ignorance is educational deprivation. Facts. Sometimes what people call brokenness is actually the result of policy, theft, exclusion, and generational pressure. Second, this author names the issue of racial difference and social hierarchy. He writes from the worldview of his time. This is in the 1800s, placing white society above black society and treating their hierarchy as a social fact. What I mean is these colonizers coming in here creating facts that are actually pseudo facts and acting like this is a social construct that we all agreed to. This author also connects this to the master-servant relationship and the power of owners and managers. This is what we have to read critically because this chapter is not neutral. It shows us how religious concern and racial hierarchy could exist in the same mind, meaning you could be enslaved and be a Christian. And sometimes your master did not have to be a Christian because they needed you to be the Christian so that you could obey them better. I hope that's not going over some people's heads. It shows us that this is one of the most important lessons in the whole book. A person can talk about God and still believe in domination. They can still believe in controlling you and that they own by you, even though they are Christian. A person can still preach morality and still defend hierarchy, meaning they can say they're a moral person, but still say, oh, I'm white, I'm better than you. A person can say souls matter while denying full human dignity. This is what they did all throughout history, and this book definitely points that out. A person can call themselves benevolent while maintaining control. To me, it never makes sense this whole time we've been reading this book. This is why we do not listen to religious language. We examine the structure underneath the religious language because it's always a trick. This is why we have to read this book, okay? Because spiritual language can be used to liberate, but spiritual language, when taught by a colonizer, can be used to manage people. A lot of our ancestors got caught in the trap thinking that religious teaching and instructions was meant to free them. They said, hey, we're teaching them to be free in the afterlife. But the whole time they're oppressing you, they made you feel comfortable with being oppressed. They made you feel comfortable with poverty, with enslavement, because they teach it in school like it's nothing. But they don't teach you the truth. They just teach you the pseudo history. The third thing this author says, he says there is a disinclination to fully disclose the real condition of the people. Why? Because full disclosure would require accountability. That is the part. If they admitted the real moral, intellectual, and religious conditions of the people, then they will also have to admit that the system had failed them. They will also have to admit neglect. They will have to admit responsibility. They will have to admit business as usual was not righteous. So they didn't really tell the truth. And that still holds true today. A business owner may not want to look at the books because the books might reveal the truth, right? A family may not want to discuss the trauma because the trauma reveals patterns. You guys know in history, some families hide trauma because it is very something they don't want to talk about. They want to sweep it under the rug. I've been faced with trauma in my life from men, and the person who you think is supposed to protect you might be like, I don't want to get them in trouble. We've been through that before. A church may not want to discuss history because history reveals complicity. Now, y'all know the Pope just came out and apologized for the slave trade. That is not enough. That's not fucking enough, okay? You coming out apologizing is not enough. Y'all need to reverse all the laws because every law that y'all created, the Pope, the Vatican, the papal bulls, the Inca-Terra, all these different things is what Christopher Columbus and his goons used to come over here and steal our land. And now y'all want to apologize and not get nothing back? I think the fuck not. A nation may not want to discuss land, labor, and law because those records will reveal theft. Just seen that yesterday, shaking my head. Exactly. The Pope just came out again. They already came out in 2023, I might be wrong on the year, and said, we have a resolution, it was wrong. And now they're starting to come out. And it's because we have been speaking out. We are not going to be quiet. The whole Christian, Vatican, all of them are responsible for this. And people would not believe that. But the Pope came out and said it himself. All right? So full disclosure threatens false peace. But Hood2Hooded is not built on false peace. It's built on clarity, which is what we're going to get today. Because peace without truth is just silence with makeup on. Right? Right. So the fourth thing that the author says is that it's difficult to obtain sight into the real character of the people. He argues that enslaved and free black people behaved one way in front of the white people and had another way amongst themselves. I wonder why. His language is harsh and biased, but the deeper historical lesson is this. Oppressed people often develop masks for survival. There is the face shown to the power, and then there is the self-preserve in private. Right? That is not simply deception. That is survival intelligence. Our ancestors had to be very intelligent to survive. When a person lives under surveillance, they can learn performance. When a person lives under punishment, they can learn concealment. When a person lives under domination, they can learn to speak, when to be quiet, when to appear harmless, and when to protect the inner self. In the movie Get Out, which is one of my favorite movies. I don't even know how they let that movie get out. But in that movie, you'll see when he was sitting in the chair, they were trying to brainwash him. They had their ancestors and their show repeatedly showing on the TV. They were trying to get into his system, right? But he tricked them. This is called survival intelligence. He stuffed his ears so he couldn't hear it. He closed his eyes so he couldn't see what the hell they were saying. He did not talk, but when they came in, they did not know that he had not been brainwashed. To them, they thought, what we did to everybody else worked. But he had survival intelligence, which is what you need nowadays. When they thought that he had been, brainwashed, he broke out. He fought all of them. He broke free, right? So as we read, we are not accepting every judgment the author makes. Because remember who's writing the book. We are studying the judgments. Sounds like public school situation. Facts. 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 We are asking, what does this reveal about the observer? What does this reveal about the system? What does this reveal about power? About spiritual control? Spiritual control is a weapon. It is one of the biggest weapons you will ever face, and it's a powerful one. Because if you got somebody in your family and they are very religious, they're going to make you sound like you a demon if you don't abide and fall in line. Thank you for getting that daily heart messages. All right? So the Hood2Hooded lesson today is this. When the system investigates the people it harmed, It often describes the wound without confessing the weapon. I'm going to say it again. When you have colonizers or the enemy studying and investigating the people that they harm, they don't ever confess to the weapon that they use, but they always talk about the wound. That is the lesson. It will describe poverty, but not theft. Look at Black Wall Street, how they erased all of the wealth that that community had and put them into poverty, made them stand in the food stamp line when they had so many businesses. The system will describe ignorance, but not educational restriction. Like you said, school. They want to say someone is ignorant, but are you teaching them financial literacy? Are you teaching our own history? And you know that they're not. They're actually banning the history about us. And if they do try to tell us any history, they're going to say, oh, you came from Africa. So that immediately is a lie. You know? And some parents don't stop the school from brainwashing their kids because they've been brainwashed, so it's a generational curse. It will describe family instability, but not forced separation, how you keep the father out of the house. They will describe moral decline, but not the conditions that produce the despair. They will describe our character, but not the captivity. Right? So today, as we read, I want us to listen with two ears. One ear listens to what the author, this guy, is saying about our religious instructions that they are forcing on us. And you know, if a colonizer is giving you something when they have taken everything away, in the beginning of this book, they didn't even want the people to read the Bible because they said, oh, there's laws against reading. We can't let them read. So they had this type of like conflict. It was kind of weird. But today, we listen with two ears. The other ears listening for what the author cannot fully admit in the book. Because sometimes history is not only the words, sometimes history is in the blind spots, guys. So this is a call to action before we get into the reading tonight. Make sure you like this live. Hey, Engine Radio in the building. Make sure you like this live, subscribe, and share this with somebody who is trying to understand history beyond the surface level shit. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment. I am reading history with new eyes. If you're listening later from the Hood2Hooded Podcast, just join the email list, which is on my website, drshon.com. This is not just content. This is curriculum. This is healing work. This is legacy architect. So, you know, if this type of lesson in history helps you think deeper, build stronger, and understand the systems we inherited, stay connected because Hood2Hooded is building a whole new ecosystem around health, history, discipline, wealth, identity, and legacy. So this is from your hood to your future. Now, let's get into part 2, chapter 1. All right? So as we read, pay attention to 3 things, family. We back. Hey, and hopefully it doesn't get chopped off today. Engine Radio. Hopefully. We'll see. So number 1, family. Number 1 is how the author describes the people. Number 2, how the author describes the people in power. And number 3, what the author leaves unchallenged. Because this chapter is not only about religious instruction, which we read earlier, it is about who gets to define morality under oppression. And I know that's a deep topic to think about. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into our reading. And if you want to read word for word, you can come on YouTube. The link is in my bio. We are reading it word for word. But TikTok, plus my other platforms, I can't read word for word. So we just got the picture on TikTok. But hopefully y'all can hear me. So let's get into it. Part 2, the moral and religious condition of the Negroes in the United States. Chapter 1. Disadvantages to be encountered in prosecuting an inquiry into the moral and religious conditions of the Negro in the United States. All right. A knowledge of the moral and religious conditions of the Negro is essential to correct feelings and action thereto. Until we arrive at such knowledge and have it pressed upon our serious consideration, we shall have no just sense of obligation. We shall feel no criminality for past neglect, no disposition for future amendment, nor shall we be able to adopt plans for their improvement, as we must necessarily become acquainted with the nature and extent of disease before we can hope to fully prescribe it. That an inquiry into the moral and religious condition of the Negro population in the United States may be prosecuted with success amidst of no question. And yet, whether we live in the North or at the South, notwithstanding we enjoy favorable advantages for the inquiry, we certainly labor under some very serious disadvantages, which threaten to impair the faithfulness with which it should be prosecuted and answered. Nay, these disadvantages may exert such an influence upon some that admitting the inquiry to be prosecuted and answered according to the truth, they may withhold assent. These disadvantages therefore demand consideration. They arise in general out of the intimate and long continued connection with these people. Habits of feeling and prejudices in relation to any subject are wont to take the rise out of our education and circumstances. Every man knows their influence to be great in shaping opinions and conduct, and oftentimes how unwittingly they are formed. That while we may be unconscious of their existence, they may grow with our growth and strengthen with our strength. Familiarity converts deformity to comeliness. Hence, we are not always the best judges of our condition. Another may remark inconveniences and indeed real evils in it, of which we may be said to have been all our lives scarcely conscious. So also evils which upon first acquaintance revolted, our whole nature appeared intolerable. Custom also makes us forget even to see. Men passing out of one state of society into another encounter 1,000 things to which they feel they must never be reconciled. Yet shortly after their sensibilities become dull. A change passes over them they scarcely know about. They have accommodated themselves to their new circumstances and relations. They are Romans in Rome. That the people of the United States indulge prejudices in respect to the Negroes, both in favor of and adverse to them, as distinct variety of human family, and as a subordinate class in society, and is a fact not to be disguised. On one hand, their ignorance, vulgarity, idleness, improvidence, irreligion, and vice are to be ascribed all together to their position and circumstances. Let these be changed for the better, and the African will immediately equal, if not greatly excel, the rest of the human family in majesty of intellect, elegance of manners, purity of morals, and ardor of piety. Yea, they will become the very beau ideal of character, the admiration of the world. On the other hand, the race has been from time immemorial just what it is and just what it must continue to be. It occupies position designed for it in nature and providence, and no changes and no efforts can ever on the whole alter it for the better. Prejudices also lie all along between these extreme oscillations of opinion. Happy is that mind which under gales of excitement and conflicting with waves of agitation preserves its balance and keeping its eye upon the truth, steadily advances towards it. It may be likened to the well-adjusted compass which noisily preserves its equilibrium and faithfully points to the star, although the mountain waves roar and the ship is driven with the fierce winds and toss. The first disadvantage which I shall mention is our intimate knowledge of the degraded moral character of the Negro. From childhood, we have been accustomed to their slovenly and too frequently their scanty dress, to their broken English, ignorance, vulgarity, and vice. What in them would disgust and grieve a stranger or truly afflict us if seen in white persons, we pass by with little or no impression. As a matter of course, they are Negroes. What? Wait a minute. You see what I'm saying? It says their character is held in low estimation throughout the United States, and considering what is not without reason. For that character cannot be esteemed, which in itself is not estimable. Whatever is idle, dissolute, criminal, and worthless attaches to them. What the? They said whatever is idle, dissolute, criminal, and worthless attaches to them. Are you serious? We created everything. Obviously, all the inventions attached to us, all the land attached to us, all the creations attached to us. So, this is why we got to read what they're saying about us, because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Anywho, unconsciously or rather instinctively, we determine what the fruits must be from their known character, condition, and circumstances. And when they do appear, we are not surprised. We say, what better can be expected? So they're expecting us to be criminals, worthless, all these different negative things, although they are holding people hostage as traffickers. I should probably never say that. They probably gonna block me. They're holding people hostage, doing all these things, but at the same time they're talking about our character. This is why we gotta read this. Okay. Such a general corruption of morals as would blast the reputation of any white community is known to exist among them, and yet how unaffected we are by it. Indeed, the habit of our mind is to consider them in a state of moral degradation, to expect little that is truly excellent and praiseworthy, and to feel lightly and to pass over as well as we can what is revolting in them. We are disposed not to try them as we would others by the standard which is wholly just and good, but by a low worldly standard accommodated to their character and circumstances. Vice seems to lose its hideousness in proportion as it shades itself in black. As in painting, with black we obliterate the warm light and soft shades and native hues, which gave depth and life and beauty to the picture, and the eye rests upon the dark, dead surface without emotion. A second disadvantage is our difference in color and our superior relations to them in society. Now, see, before we go into this, when you talk about color, we got to remember that melanin is 1 billion years old. Melanin is connected to the sun. Melanin is the defense system against the sun. So when you listen to a colonizer talk about the color difference, you automatically know what is superior. When you have a defense system against the sun that they don't teach about in school, that kids think their melanin is bad, people around here bleaching their skin because they think melanin is bad, you just don't know who you are. And you have allowed the enemy to tell you who you are. So when they're writing about black, I guarantee you if they could figure out how to get melanin, the whole world would have it. Because why would you not want protection against ultraviolet rays and the sun? Why would you not want that? Oh, everybody wants that. But if you don't have it, you want to tell other people to hate that they have it. That's just a little sidebar. All right? It said, at the head of the varieties of the human race stands the fair or Caucasian variety, which, to use the language of another, has given birth to the most civilized nations of ancient and modern times, and has exhibited the moral and intellectual powers of human nature in the highest degree of perfection. I do not think that you fucking enslaving people is no form of highest degree of perfection. I don't know what they was smoking when they wrote this book. I really don't know what they was smoking. Because there's no way you think that this is the highest degree of perfection. But he said that, not me. Melanin survived under that hot sun since the beginning of time. Facts. 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 It says, at the foot stands the black and Ethiopian variety, which has ever remained in a rude and barbarous state, and been looked upon and treated as inferior by all the other varieties of human race from time immemorial. There is superiority on one hand and inferiority on the other. Ascribe it to whatever cause you may, whether to the immediate providence of God or to nature itself, to a difference in original Constitution or to circumstances. The fact remains, and it can but be seen and felt. It is only the fact and its influence on us that we have to do. We learn the fact in our elementary studies at school. It's not a fucking fact. A larger acquaintance with the history of the world and extensive observation in afterlife impress it more deeply. A sense of this superiority is hereditary in the citizens of the free states. Originally, not very long ago, these states were slave states. It has been propagated from father to son and exhibits itself in the manners and customs on all the face of society there. It may be wearing out, but very slowly. What renders the superiority more palpable and influential in our case in the South is that we still continue to maintain the relation of master and all the differences in our standing, privileges, and circumstances in society created by that relation in custom and law. There is consequently superiority on the one side and inferiority on the other in almost every point of view. But as we are masters, so are we managers. They neither can nor will plan or execute their work by directions alone. We are compelled to see that they do their work. Neither will they act honestly, quietly, nor virtuously, left to themselves. We are again compelled to regulate their conduct by fixed laws, to warn, encourage, reward, and punish. So you thinking that your manager at work started just as a manager? No, the manager used to be the master. The master turned into your manager to make sure you was working right. Because they didn't think that you could do it honestly, quietly, or virtuously. They didn't think they could leave you alone. They had to put fixed laws to make sure that you were doing your job. And they said to warn, encourage, reward, and punish. And they saying that God told them to do this now. The religion told them that this is okay. It says, hence we are brought directly in contact with their depravity and its multiplied developments. We are astonished from time to time at the disclosure of their duplicity, dishonesty, trick, and cunning. Those only who have or have had the management of Negroes know what the hardening effect is upon their own hearts. That man who takes possession of his property and commences the management of his people with that feeling of interest and tenderness which he has cherished for them from his childhood, and with the willingness to favor them in every way, must be watchful. Otherwise, from their general character and behavior painfully exhibited to him, he will withdraw his confidence entirely and settle down into a state of indifference, his patience being exhausted, his feelings having undergone an entire change towards them. Preach! Throw then these points together. We belong to distinct varieties of human race with the superiority on our side. A superiority rendered more apparent by the relation which we sustain to them as masters, and more real both to them and us when we become managers. And shall we be in no danger of cherishing, it may be of cherishing unconsciously, a disrespect, if not a contempt for the Negroes, which may influence us to sink them lower in the scale of intelligence, morality, and religion than in truth and justice they should be. My. It says a third disadvantage is our latent and in many instances manifest disinclination to the full disclosure of the moral and religious condition of the Negro. The disinclination is in the proportion to the use proposed to be made of the facts of the case and arises from several causes. Sometimes they are so wordy with all these words that they really ain't saying shit. All right, one is pride. There are citizens in the free state who give, perhaps without any conscious design, an entirely false coloring of the moral character and prospects of the free Negroes among them. in order to support some favorite theory or to shield the impotency of their own efforts or themselves from the ancient approach. What do ye more than others? Physician, heal thyself. In the South, we spiritedly repel the charge of the injustice of the present constitution of society by referring our opponents to the sacred scriptures, which afford us their support, and to the argument drawn from expediency and necessity. On the charge of inhumanity, we appeal to the ample provision of food and clothing, to the attention paid to the sick and the aged, to the lightness of the labor and the punishments, and to the good health, the spirits, and increase of the people in question. So they're just basically saying they were being charged with saying what they were doing was inhumane in the South. But he's saying, hey, we gave them ample food and clothing. We paid attention to them when they were sick, but they still are slaves, basically. And we have the scripture to back us up. He says, we compared their physical comfort and the amount of labor which they performed with that of the laboring classes in England and on the continent of Europe and elsewhere, and we do not suffer at all by comparison. I think that's where they got us fucked up, because we not in England, and we are not born to be enslaved. We were indigenous, melanated, autochthonous, the stewards of our own land, the farmers, the agriculturalists, the creators, the inventors of the toilet stool, the lights, the internet, everything. They just got us all messed up. That was 2 whole paragraphs that said exactly nothing. Facts. They just talking a whole bunch of big words. And they not really saying much, but they say something every now and then that tell you how evil this is. It says, but when the charge of their intellectual and moral degradation is preferred against us, we are inclined to put the best face on affairs, knowing that this is the darkest feature and the most vulnerable point. We discovered this feeling in the class of factory and landowners in England, whose statements on the moral condition of their operatives cannot be taken but with many grains of allowance. They would not have it known to what an ignorant and degraded race of operatives they are indebted for the comforts and conveniences of their lives as individual and for whatever of prosperity they enjoy as corporations and community. But we are wrong, decidedly wrong. The moral and religious condition of the Negroes is that subject which above all others, as Christian people, we should desire most thoroughly to investigate and understand. Sound like Destiny Swap. Facts. And the truth coming from whatever quarter will do us no harm, provided we allow it to have its proper effect on us. Another cause is the fear of investigation itself and of the consequences to which it may lead. The South, in view of the excitement on the general condition of the Negroes, and the North and West has become sensitive. We have been thrown from necessity into attitude of self-defense, and our strength consists in our union. Hence, the public mind exercises a sleepless vigilance, that it may detect, either from abroad or originating at home, any sentiments or opinions hostile to our social constitution. There is less discussion and less freedom of discussion than in bygone days. What we once bore from ourselves is with difficulty borne now. That man runs the risk of losing popular favor whose candid statements and appeals designed to do good at home are seized upon with avidity and perverted and made matter of accusation against us from abroad. He has to pass between Celia and Charbadis. Under such circumstances, there must be a strong inclination to silence. He will ponder well the proverb, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. As great interests are involved, should he speak, he will act wisdom of God, who giveth liberty and upbraideth not. I don't understand how they use so many Bible scriptures to talk about enslaving people. I don't understand how they using so many religious sayings to justify enslaving people and being the master, and it's just confusing. what they were. I don't understand. Sleepless vigilance equals paranoid racism. Wow. Wow. Many are disposed to let all things continue as they are and as they have been. There appears to be a misgiving that if we look diligently into the moral and religious conditions of the Negroes, we shall make such discoveries that in order to satisfy conscience towards God and man, we shall be obliged to enter fully and vigorously upon the improvements of our people. New cares, new troubles, new duties, new expenses array themselves before us, and we recoil from them all. Changes are inconvenient, even from bad to good. What? They said it's inconvenient to change from bad to good for them. Why do you think that? Put it in the chat. It says, masters find it difficult to elevate their servants in their regards after they have for so long a time been depressed. To change their general course of treatment would be virtually acknowledging to them and to all the world that they have been in error. Now, right now, I feel like a lot of the history that they have written down in books like this, they don't want to talk about it because it admits that they have been wrong the whole time. It will admit that they have thought that enslavement was right, that being a Christian white male prince is right, and if you're not a Christian, then you're wrong, and they can do whatever they want. They have thought that stealing land and, thieving in all types of ways, doing all types of genocide, homicide, all of these sides was right for the whole time they've been on our land. They came over here in the 1600s and said we're going to start plantations, steal their land, and act like they was at the red light in traffic. You know what I mean? They was heavy in traffic, if you feel what I'm saying. It says, to change the general course of treatment would be virtually acknowledging to them and to all the world that they have been in error, that they have not placed them as high in the scale of intellectual and moral being as they should have done. In short, that they have not done them justice. Humility and self-denial are demanded, but it is not easy to exercise these graces towards inferiors' independence. Masters see, as they suppose, in all this a lowering down of opinions, character, and dignity. They think that they shall lose respect and authority. The change will certainly inflate their servants, foster a spirit of equality and disobedience, and in the end be productive of no good. So they felt like, hey, if we tell them that we equal, which we not because we don't think like you, we are actually at a higher level because we would never think that enslaving people is right. But they said that the masters did not want to tell us the truth about the intelligence and all of the greatness that we possess because it would make them lose respect and authority. So that's why you would have people who walk around on the internet or in real life who got to throw slurs at you. They try to bring you down because if they try to treat you nice, this might make you, feel like you equal, basically. It says, there are others again to whom the question recurs, how far we may proceed in the religious instruction of the Negro without endangering our interests, our safety, and our support. Say, we know not when we begin to do what may be necessary in the premises, where we shall end or how. It's just easier to be an oppressor than a leader. Facts. You stummed it up, Pip Snipe Husker. She said, wow, right. It said, it will be hard to close the door after it is once open. And they opened that door. When we fought for equality, we opened that door. We said, hey, we're not insubordinate to you. We don't need a master. What are you talking about? And they said, we cannot let this go. They were holding on so tight to try to keep enslavement alive, because this is right before 1865 when Emancipation Proclamation, all that took place. They were still trying to hold on. It says, we may safely confide in those who undertake the work now, but what security have we in their successors shall be men of like character? It is better, therefore, to cease from this matter before it be meddled with. their moral and religious condition may not be as bad as some would have believed, we have been doing well in times past. Apply then the adage to the case in hand. Let well alone, they said. Just Pitt. Let's make it easy, Doc. Okay, Pitt. You got it. It says a fourth and last disadvantage is the difficulty of obtaining an insight into the Negro character. Persons live and die in the midst of Negroes and know comparatively little of their real character. Even in this book, they wanted to know, what is our real character? What is our real culture? Because the whole time they're trying to convert us to Christianity. But they were realizing that we have to kind of act like we are moral when we actually doing something inhumane. It's kind of like they're lying to themselves. Like you said, Pitt, it's easier to be an oppressor than a leader. They were like, we don't know about being a leader because this leader stuff might make us tell on ourselves that what we're doing is not right. You know? It says they have not the immediate management of them. They have to do with them in the ordinary discharge of their duty as servants. Further than this, they institute no inquiries. They give themselves no trouble. The Negroes are a distinct class in the community and keep themselves very much to themselves. They are one thing before the whites and another before their own color. Duh. They were like, dang, they acting different in front of us, but when they get together, they're different. It's kind of like that. Now they call that code switching. Code switching. Right? Because back then you had to code switch or you would be put to sleep forever. Oh, I like the way I say that now versus unalive. It says deception towards the former is characteristics of them, whether bond or free throughout the whole United States. It is habit, a long-established custom which descends from generation to generation. There is an upper and an undercurrent. Some are contented with the appearance on the surface, others dive beneath. Hence the diversity of impressions and representations of moral and religious conditions of the Negroes. Hence the disposition of some to deny the darker pictures of their more searching and knowing friends. Besides all this, the moral perceptions of men differ. The eye of one man is single, the eye of another man is evil. What this esteems bad, that considers to be very good. What? Nor have all. It says, nor have all the same opportunity of assisting their judgment by comparison. A man may greatly aid himself in attaining a correct opinion of the moral and religious conditions of the Negroes in the United States, and especially of those in the slave states, by becoming from observation acquainted with the moral and religious condition of other masses of laborers in other states and countries. It is not good to measure ourselves by ourselves. What? One opportunity of faithful comparison will shed more light and carry more conviction into the mind oftentimes than volumes of facts and arguments. The only danger to be appended from such comparison is that becoming acquainted with that which is worse, we may rest satisfied with that which is bad. I kind of don't understand that. If somebody understands that, let me know. My mama on them phone calls, I always look at her like, what the fuck, mama, why you speaking like that? And she'll look at me just smiling and grinning, sometimes try not to laugh. Pit touche. It says, here then are the obvious disadvantages to be encountered in an inquiry into the moral and religious condition of the Negro. The first, our intimate knowledge of their degraded character. The second, our belonging to a different variety of human family and sustaining towards them the relations of superiors. The third, our disinclination to a full disclosure of their moral and religious condition, arising from several causes. And the fourth, the difficulty of obtaining an insight into the Negro character. The whole time they're trying to figure out what is our character, and the whole time they're trying to convert us to Christianity. By this time in the book, they went from like 0 Negroes or Indians who were Christian to now they had over 100,000 of them converted to Christianity. So you can imagine now it's a lot more of us who have converted to Christianity to the point where they don't even have to do all this now. We just force each other to do it. You're just born into it. It's kind of like a generational curse. It's a generational spell that they put on you, and they know it. They calculate this. Some people sleep, but they calculate this. They're trying to figure out our character, figure out our religious instructions, everything in this book. It says, they must be borne in mind in the progress of the inquiry. In regard to the moral and religious condition of the Negroes, we, especially of the South, can have no just reason for remaining in ignorance and inactivity. The subject involves our accountability to them, and for them, which we shall surely meet in that world where all earthly distinctions are at an end. And it involves their own eternal well-being, than which nothing can be more valuable to them. Every sober and reflecting mind should be impressed with the importance and solemnity of the inquiry. And then that chapter is over, guys. That chapter is over. Next is chapter 2, which I'm not going to read today. Whoa, chapter 2 look a little bit interesting. Maybe I'll read the first page. What? Wait a minute. I got to read the first page. That proper speaking mode she did always had me took off guard. Was funny AF. Wait a minute. I might have to read just the beginning of this, but during what we just read, he is saying that before there can be action, we must have knowledge of the Negroes. We got to understand their character. We got to have knowledge from the plantation owner, from the church, from the people. He said that, familiarity can make people feel numb. We talked about that, how you can live with so much injustice for so long that you feel like it's not injustice. I'll be back here for the next chapter. Thank you, PGS Corey. And he talked about, racial hierarchy. So this section, the questions that I would have for you guys is, what happens when society gets used to seeing a group of people suffer? That's number one. That's what has happened now. They have put us into the group of people that suffer because they stole everything from us. The second question is, how can religion be used both as comfort and control? They were trying to use religion as comfort and to control us. So this chapter gives us a lot to sit with. It's really about the difficulty of telling the truth when the truth seems to threaten the comfort of the people in power. And a lot of people nowadays feel like, dang, we've been talking about history. We've been covering all of the truth. We've been uncovering all these things. But when is something going to happen? As a waiting room. It's like, when is something going to happen? But what is going on is the people who are in America, the leaders in government, know that they started this government from war. Everything that they done was from war, from theft, from slave raiding, from slave patrol, from, laws that didn't make sense, from just, when I say slave raiding, this really means they come to your house. You know how like a police do a raid? They would come, do a raid. They didn't have to have a search warrant or the things that you need now, like a warrant. They didn't need all that. The law was that they can raid anywhere they wanted to, come in and destroy it. They could say you said something to them, look them in the eye, they can take you out of here. So this is a system that they were dealing with back then. And they felt like they were right. So in this chapter, he's trying to figure out a lot. He's trying to make the case that moral and religious conditions of the people must be investigated. Take your kids. He's trying to say that if they expose the prejudices, then, it puts them in an uncomfortable situation. That's like now, the Pope coming out, which is big for him to come out and say, hey, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, we have been a big part. Actually, y'all are the reason for slavery. They are the reason why these things happen. and he's coming out and apologizing, but to me, it's just not enough. In America, I don't know what it's going to take for them to apologize, and, it's just going to be a war, I feel. They're giving reparations to the people who stormed the Capitol. I know y'all heard about that. When society sees suffering, they turn away and make excuses. Facts. When they see suffering, they turn away, they make excuses, they try to act like it doesn't happen, but when you come from the hood, you know that it's happening. This is why we read. This is why we question things. This is why we do not let old language hypnotize us, because what I just read, they put a lot of fluff in it, but you kind of see how they are thinking about us. They're saying, hey, we got to study them. But we got to study y'all. We have to decode what you're trying to learn about us. We have to extract the lesson for ourselves so we can build forward. Hood2Hooded is not about staying in the pain. It's about turning the pain into pattern recognition. Turning the pattern recognition into wisdom. And then we turn that wisdom into systems. And those systems become freedom. Right? So that's why it's from your hood to your future. Before you leave today, I hope that you like, share, subscribe. And remember, we're not just reading old books. We are recovering stolen context. We are rebuilding our mind with this information. We are creating a future that our ancestors were denied but never stopped dreaming towards. They never stopped. Because back then they were saying, oh, they're not our equal. What would happen if we took them out of slavery? But our ancestors didn't care about that. They fought anyways. OMG, the J6 slush fund is just abominable. Yeah, the J6 slush fund, that's crazy. But I told y'all a long time ago, they been gave reparations to the slave owners, to the masters. Way back then, when they did the emancipation in 1865, Washington, D.C. gave reparations to the masters. They know how to give money away. They know how to give reparations. They're just never going to give it to us. I think that's going to be a never. Right? It's too many of us. So, I am going to read chapter 2 tomorrow, even though it seems very juicy, and I want to read it right now. I just want to read the first page, and then I'm going to be gone. It says, chapter 2, circumstances of the Negroes which affect the moral and religious conditions. It says, the character of the people may be gathered from their circumstances. A condition, therefore, of the circumstances in which we find our Negro population is a necessary and preparatory step to the inquiry we have in hand. Number 1, the circumstances of the slave population. As habits of virtue and vice are formed and character shaped at a very early age, I shall begin with the Negro in his childhood. Appreciate the live. Thank you, PGS Corey. Can I just say Corey? I got to come up with some nicknames. So we got Pig, we got Engine Radio. I don't know if you want me to call you the full Engine Radio, but Corey. It says the formation of good character depends upon family, government, and training, upon religious instructions, private and public, access to the scriptures and other sources of intellectual and moral improvement, the character of associates, modesty of clothing, and general mode of living. If we take the mass of the slave population, properly speaking, we shall find but little family government. You hear what they saying? So when you around here talking about F family, this, they know that you don't have much family government. So the fact that you're rebuking family government, you're not trying to get together with your family, that's saying you don't really care. Yeah, that's cool, sis. I don't mind. Okay. That probably was their plan. Hey, first people to get to DC Capitol will receive under the table payout later after everything is calmed down. Yeah, that's their plan. Yeah. They're never going to give us reparations, guys. If you can go to my YouTube channel, I did like a video on, when what tribe was that? One of the Indian tribes was fighting for reparations for like 100 years. And they didn't give it to them because they said the government can't afford to give y'all reparations. If we did, it would be unprecedented. So imagine if they tried to pay us the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that they stole from us. They would be bankrupt, even more than they are bankrupt already. So it's not going to happen. It says, and for the reason that parents are not qualified, neither are they so circumstanced as to be able to fulfill perfectly the duties devolving upon them as such. They saying that the parents not even qualified to be parents. In the more intellect and pious families, the children are taught to say their prayers, to go to church on the Sabbath, and to attend evening prayers on the plantation, and a few simple rules of good conduct and manners. The majority of the church members come short of this. The moral training of children forms but a small part of their effort in the family. There is not one family in the thousands in which family prayer is observed morning and evening. Prayers are held in some families morning and evenings on the Sabbath, and others in the evening of every day. But a general meeting of all the members of the church, as well as of worldly persons, for prayer in the evening on plantations, conducted by some prominent person among them, takes the place of family worship. The plantation is considered one large family. To this meeting, children are required to come or not, as the case may be. The hour is usually so late that most children have retired for the night. If such is the state of religious families, what must be the state of those which are irreligious? In multitudes of families, both by precept and example, the children are trained up in iniquity, taught by their parents to steal, to lie, to deceive. How, when y'all the biggest thieves sitting on the plantation with the stolen land, talking about religion and stealing? It doesn't make no sense. It says, nor can the rod of correction induce a confession or revelation of their clearly ascertained transgressions. Virtue is not cherished nor protected in them. Parents put their children to use as early as it is possible, and their discipline mainly respects omissions of the duty in the household. Moral delinquencies are passed by, and that discipline owes its chief efficiency to excited passions, and consequently exists in the extreme of laxity and severity. They oftentimes, when under no restraint, beat their children unmercifully. As to direct religious instructions, we have seen that the amount communicated in families is small. So they're telling you back then they had to basically force us to have religion. They forced religion on the plantation. Think about it. A master giving you everything, taking everything. They're taking the land. They barely want to feed you. They barely want to give you clothes. They barely want you to read. They're not giving you no books. They being very violent, but they forcing you to go to church. Just think about that. They're forcing you to go to church. They're going to their church and they're getting religious instructions from the Vatican, the crown, to say, hey, make sure your Negroes are going to church. Because if they go to church, guess what? They're going to be a better slave. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. We're not going to keep reading this chapter. But chapter 2 is talking about the children, man. Talking about they're studying the children. They're trying to figure out what are we doing so that we can do it more. Hey, because remember, in the first chapter, they said, hey, they tested the children going to the Sunday school. There was no church. There was no Sunday school on the plantation. Then they sent around a sermon from England. It was sent to 10,000 copies were printed. They sent it to the plantations. They sent it to the colonies. They sent it all over and said, hey, you need to give the Negroes religious instructions. This is going to make them be obedient. They said you need to tell the people on the plantation to send them to church. They started creating churches. They started converting us. They used the word converting. Catechism. They use all these words to figure out how they can lower our defenses. So some people would feel like, oh, we always had church. No. Church is a generational curse given to you by the masters, the slave owners, and the people who were over them. It's not something that we had. That's why they're telling you, hey, we got to study and see what they're doing because we don't know much about them. So they would come around and study us, see when we were praying, if we were reading the Bible, when are we reading it? until the point where they said, hey, master, you can't have them work 7 days. You need to give them Sabbath day so that they can get religious instructions. And you need to get religious instructions too, so they will get religious instructions. So they start letting the people they owned off on Sunday to go to church. That's where that stemmed from. Then they said, okay, with the kids, we have to put them in Sunday school. Sabbath day school, they called it. So they tested the kids in Sabbath day school from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then they would have to go to the regular worship. And then they put them back into Sunday school from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. So they had to go to Sabbath school for 8 hours. This translated to weekday school. So that's how you got school during the week now. Now you have the enemy controlling the time. They're controlling your children because they said the children are more malleable. We can give them religious instructions more easily. And that's exactly what they did. During all of these chapters, that's exactly what they did. Right? Hold on, I missed something on YouTube. Y'all over here lighting it up. Appreciate the live. It says, let me see. The U.S. versus Sioux Nation settlement from the 1980s remain unclaimed. With interest is now worth $2 billion. How might that cash be put to use? They're not going to do it. They don't have enough money. They're just printing money at this point. If they were to pay all of us who have been reclassified, who have been lied on, who have been harassed and bullied in every type of way, physically, mentally, etc., they would be triple, double, quadruple bankrupt. It would be an embarrassment. But they are holding on to this secret. They don't want to say nothing. They probably pissed at the Pope for saying something like, God damn it, Pope, why are you sitting here talking? They don't want the world to know that the church and the Vatican is responsible for all of this heinous crime going on right now, to the point where white supremacists think they're ordained by God to control other people. This is all from the Catholic Church. They're the ones who created this psychopathic mindset, right? It said, obey peons. Everyone's scared of hurting white folks' feelings except for us. Facts. Right. That entire movie was about us making white folks feel comfortable and making sure their feelings don't get hurt. Opiate of the masses. I hate to quote Mayo, but it is relevant. Yep, that was the original school, Sabbath school, yes, or Sunday school, yes. We invent money every day. Why draw the line at reparations? Facts, because if they give us that, it would defeat the whole purpose of them bombing Black Wall Street and other places like that. It would defeat their whole history. Their whole history is just full of war. It's just full of hate. It's just full. The foundation is just full of hate. And in my opinion, hate does not last forever. Hate is something that you have to keep investing hate into it. It doesn't grow. Every year you got to do something more hateful. That's why they're trying to block the maps. They're trying to do this. They're trying to give reparations to the Capitol stormers. They're trying to do everything, start war, except address what we, who are indigenous to this land, have been screaming and shouting. They're trying to block TikTok. They're trying to censor the algorithm. They're doing everything in their power to not admit that, hey, we was wrong as fuck. We was wrong as fuck. How do we solve this issue? I don't know. I don't think there's a way for them to solve it except just dissolve it. Just dissolve it. You know, I don't know how you can solve it. I don't think that it's an issue that can be solved at this point, because if we know from history, every time we tried to dissolve it, peace treaties, all of this, it was always like a lie. Everything has been a lie, you know? So I feel like us as a culture, as a community, as a population, we are so traumatized from just being connected and from them researching us, trying to figure us out. Even in this book, they're trying to figure us out, trying to control us. What are the Negroes doing? Everybody want to know, what are the Negroes doing? Like, when TikTok got shut down, where are the black people in America? It's like, why y'all can't just leave us alone? That's all. Leave our kids alone. Why y'all just can't leave us alone? that would be too easy. That would be too easy. So we're going to get into chapter 2 tomorrow of this part of the book. And I think that it's going to be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm just trying to see how long it is. To see if I need to get up in the morning and do this. And I probably do. Oh, it's not that long. Okay. So we're going to read chapter 2 tomorrow. It's not that long. And thank you guys for joining me tonight.
Tried to rewrite the story, but the soul remembers. And when the soul remembers.
He said, Ish, this is a hard read. When the system, oh yeah, it is a hard read, but most of these books from the 1800s and before are very difficult to read, which is why most of us won't read it. But see, me, I'm going to read it because I think it's very interesting, because I am also trying to continue cracking the religious codes and to try to see what they did to us, you know? So I have to read these texts. I have at least, I would say, 20 more books just like this. Some of them are so long that I wouldn't dare read them live, but I'm thinking instead of reading the next books live, maybe I'll post a link so you can read it yourself, and then we'll have like a study club, and we'll just go chapter by chapter and, you know, go over the main points. But it is a difficult read, but I'm learning a lot. Right, shit, minding our motherfucking business as always. That what we doing. Facts! Topic suggestions are tough, dog. You chose hard stuff. I know. I choose hard topics, but you know who else is gonna do it? You know what I mean? A lot of people will never read this book because it's like, what? I'm not reading that. No, thank you. They like, no, no way. But I think this is gonna be the last book that I read live.
Spiritual glow. We came from strength and wisdom. Not everything they told. And this awakening
Happening now is bigger than
gold. Every child that hears this music might finally feel seen. That's why I keep on building from my ancestors' dreams. No more shrinking, no more silence. Oh, no more chains around the mind. We survived, now it's our time. We gonna rise higher, turn the struggle into fire. Every setback made us strong. That's why we still move on. Yeah, we gonna rise higher. Even when the nights get darker, living out the dreams they prayed, and we ain't fading away. I'm gonna rise higher. I'm gonna rise higher. I'm gonna rise higher.
American Gods, but that's a long one. I will definitely look into that. Let me write that down. I don't mind it being long. American Gods. Okay. How about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Seven Sisters. Oh, y'all giving me some good books. Invasion of Body Snatchers. What? Seven Sisters. chase life. Okay.
We are late. We glow, better let 'em know. We glow, better let 'em know. Sun hit the skin, watch the whole vibe glow. We glow, better let 'em know.
Y'all better let them know that we glow. All right, guys, this has been another episode of the Hood2Hooded Podcast. Uh-oh. Y'all tap 9.4K hearts on TikTok. Yes. Shout out to my TikTok family. Shout out to my YouTube family for coming in and hyping me up during this live. It is never easy to come live and read, but you guys are like tapping in. I have to get through this book. I'm like, dang, I can't stop in the middle. So I'm excited to get through the rest of this book and to see what else this guy has to say. I've said it before, but the Guns of August seems oddly appropriate these days. The Guns of August. I've never heard of that either. The Guns of August. Body Snatcher book, a wild one. It has indigenous American gems in it also. Really? So I guess what I'm going to do is find these books tonight. Because you know I'm the book finder. So I'm going to try to find a PDF. But the one that sticks out to me the most from this list that y'all gave me is definitely Body Snatcher's book. Like, what? That sounds creepy. And another book that I wanted to read live, but I don't know if I'm going to do it, is The Delectable Negro. I'm kind of scared to read that one live. I don't know if they're going to let me read it. Excuse me. So I don't know about that one. But I'm interested to see. So I will see y'all tomorrow, guys. You laughing at me? Yeah, I'm scared to read The Delectable Negro because that might be against the algorithm. It's like they wrote this stuff, but they don't want you to read it. Unless you read it on your own in privacy. So we'll see. I'm going to check these all out. Body Snatchers is a great flick for its time. Yeah, that's definitely nighttime books, both of those. Yeah, nighttime books. Facts. All right, Pit. All right, Engine Radio. And all my TikTok family. See you guys tomorrow. I'm out. Sweet dreams, Doc. Bye.